Okay, so for this lesson, what we're going to do is create a list of a list while the program is running. So far we could see this is compile time, which means this was already set up. Now what if we wanted to do it runtime while the program is running to fill this information and then display all this? Okay, let me delete the last version of the printing and keep the one we already had here, which was a little more detailed in terms of the elements within the list, which is within, or one of these lists within the main list. So the trick is not that complicated. All you need is right here to create an empty list. All right? So how do you do that? Well, you could use the constructor. The constructor for list is this. And now if you try to print anything right now, you're not going to get anything. So if you try to run this, the list is actually empty, as you can see, right? So we need to have some sort of insertion in which we put data in that list. So you could decide, you could do, in this case, or this is not a full-blown app, so we're going to do a small example where we're going to add 3 records, right? So let's say the counter, and counter will be how far do we want to go, is equal to 3. So we're going to go backwards. So we're going to go from 3 to 1, which will be 3 records, right? So so what do we do? Well, we could do a for loop or a while loop to allow us to step down as we add more records. So this is the max, right? Or you could call it max if you want, right? So you can, but we're going to decrement this counter, so I'm just going to keep it as a variable. And then we can do a while loop. While counter is greater than 0, so we're going to go from 3 to 1, so 3 records. So is it greater than 0 right now? Absolutely. Then we're going to go ahead and add an item within the list. So I'm going to ask the user to input some data. So maybe something like this. Name equals input, enter name. Right? So you're going to ask for the user to input a name. Good. What else? You're going to ask the user to input, let's say, the age, right? So age equals, and since the age we want it to be a number and we want it to be an integer, so go ahead and typecast it. Input, enter age. Okay, something like that. And then for the weight, we're going to make it a float. So weight equals, so we're going to typecast it to a float. Input, enter weight. Okay. Now we've got all this, but what good is it if it's just going to be data floating in the air? We need to assign it to a list that we will store in records. So how do we do that? Well, we'll need to create a list that will go within that main list records. And so we could, at this stage, go ahead and create a list, and then we'll write over it every time. So we could say record equal list, right? And then we're going to append each one of these items. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and append name, append age, and append weight. So record dot append, we'll start with name, and then we're going to do record dot append age, and then record dot append, and that would be the weight. once we're done with all of this, we know we have a list called record. Now we can take that list and append it to records. Okay, so you can go ahead and do this. Records dot append record, right? And then what else? Well, make sure you decrement your counter. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with your loop. So counter, and this time minus equal 1. You could do that, which is equivalent to saying equals counter minus 1. Right? So let me just space it out here. Let's see what happens, and then we'll display what's in the records. So we can see here this while loop is going to allow me to do data entry, and this for loop here will allow me to output the data based on what we have. So let's go ahead and run this. And notice here it's asking me for a name, Joe, age 17, weight 145.1. Notice it's going to ask me again. So Jane, age 20, weight 115.3, and then name Kelly, and age 18. And so these are athletes with their weights, 120.7. And there you have it. And you can see now, after it's done, we get to display each record one at a time. So, lesson learned here, handle the inner record, and then once you're done with it, which is a list, it creates a list right here, then take that list record and append it to the main list records, plural. And notice where I declared that one, outside the loop, right? So inside the loop, you handle the inner list, which is the inner record, and then you will append to records. So that record will be appended to records. Make sure you decrement your counter. So we're starting off from 3 until we end here. This allows me to enter 3 records. Okay. Could we have done with this with a for loop and a range? Absolutely. So this is just a review on how to use the while loop as well while we're at it. Okay, so our next video, we're going to do a little more of a practical application. Now that you've seen how you can input data into a 2-dimensional list or a list of lists and how to extract the data from it. I will see you then.